Hi, it's Maria with Longevity, here to demonstrate a few mat Pilates exercises you can do with the balanced body deflated gray ball. To begin, we're going to start lying on our back. And you'll find a bridge position, meaning your hips are going to come up towards the sky, and that ball is going to come right underneath your sacrum, which is just by your pant line. And you might have to move it around just to make sure it's nice and centered. Once you find that position, hands are going to come on the hips. And we'll start with some big breaths. So big inhale, fill yourself up. And exhale, let it go. Let's take that a few times through. Big inhale. Allow the ribs to flare, the chest to expand. And as you exhale, the hands knit together and the low back starts to melt into that ball. One more breath here, shoulders start to relax, hips start to get nice and heavy. And then we'll take our hands to the side, float those legs up into tabletop, and this alone might feel a little bit unstable for most. So you're gonna think about plugging that belly button in, starting to activate through the core, and thinking about that even distribution in your hips, meaning both hips feel like they're evenly on that ball. Pressing your hands into the mat will also help here as well, but this whole area is what's going to help keep you stable. So all we're going to do here is just take one toe down to the mat and bring it back up. Adding in the breath, I'm going to inhale, lower the toe. Exhale, drive the knee back in. Inhale, lower. Exhale, lift. Now, the further away I tap, the harder this is going to be. So to modify, you can start right about here and then work your way out each time. Nice. And really think about making this as slow and controlled as possible. Good. So that's our toe taps. Now, that can be advanced by dropping both toes down and coming back up. As you do that, you're going to think about that almost like a tuck of the pelvis, just so that the low back doesn't arch too much as the legs come down. Beautiful. And there are our toe taps. Now you can extend your legs all the way up towards the sky. Your hands can stay by the mat, or they can come behind the head as you lift the shoulders up. And then we're going to lower one leg down and take the other back up. So here we have our alternating leg lowers. Again, thinking about that length through the hip. So not allowing the other hip to shorten as one leg goes out. Staying nice and high through the shoulders, wide through the elbows. Good. Let's go for 3, 2, and 1. Our progression here is to take both legs down at the same time. Lowering both and coming back up. Again, always the option to place the head on the mat and the hands by your side. Same thing, you might find a little bit more of a range there, a little bit more control. Always coming back to that breath. Good, one more. And all the way back up. Another thing I love to do with the ball underneath here is pelvic rocks, and this is especially beneficial if you are not quite sure where your pelvis should be when doing any mat Pilates exercise, really. So right now I am tilting my pelvis up towards the sky. So if I'm going to pretend that my hip bones have headlights, the headlights are facing me right now. And then I'm arching my low back and really getting heavy on that ball. Now the headlights are facing up towards the sky, if not closer towards my knees. And I'm working in and out of that. So finding that full range here. Just moving from the pelvis. Everything else is staying still. And I'll do enough of these. That way, when I stop, it's a happy medium somewhere in between. And that is what we call in mat Pilates a neutral spine. Now I'm going to press my feet into the ground. lift my hips up, and now I'm in my bridge position. I'll take that ball and put it right between my thighs, and I'll continue here. So lowering that tailbone down, tapping into the mat, and coming back up. Thinking about my knees coming up and away, and my hands can stay by the side or they can come up to the ceiling. Mainly thinking about pressing the shoulders back down into the mat. Good. And adding in that connection with the inner thigh here, I'm going to start to squeeze that ball a little bit more than I have been. So as I lift my hips up, I'm going to squeeze that ball and then come back down. So almost layering two different exercises here. So it's a lift of the hips, pause, squeeze, and come back down. One lift, one squeeze, and we're back down. Good. Let's go for 5, 4, 3, 2. On 1, I'm holding the hips up nice and high, really squeezing that ball still. Now I'm going to start to add a little bit of unilateral movement here, meaning one side of the body moves. So one leg is going to lift up and tap down. The other leg lifts up and taps down. Now it may look like my leg is barely moving, but you will feel a lot of this. You can also do this like a single leg bridge like this, and down, and lift up, and down. Now as I am lifting one leg, I am squeezing extra hard through that opposite glute, and that will help keep my hips stable. So what you might feel or see often is as one leg lifts up, you're going to have a little bit of rotation here. What's going to counteract that is that activation through the glute. So you're going to squeeze that glute, and then the other hip will follow in place. All right, so let's take that ball and place it behind our mid-back so that if we come and lay down, our shoulders and our head are on the ground. So right now, my tailbone is nice and heavy into the mat, knees are bent, and my hands are behind my head. I'm going to think about pressing my head into my hands rather than my hands into my head. Inhale at the bottom, exhale, curl up. And I'm leading with my chest here. So my head and my elbows are just coming along for the ride. All of this is coming from my abdominals and my chest. And you'll notice that I'm much lower than I would be if I did not have the ball. So adding the ball here gives you that extra flexion and extension, which in turn makes it a little bit more challenging than your conventional abdominal curl. Adding a bit of a challenge here, next time I curl up, one leg is floating up to tabletop. So that right leg is floating to tabletop, big crunch, and curl back down. And now my left leg, and back down. So here is where we're getting that unilateral movement. And I'm also thinking about really activating that inner thigh of the opposite leg. So whichever leg is planted into the ground, that leg is getting a little bit of an inner thigh connection. Adding on even further, I'm going to reach for the knee that's coming up. So if my left leg is coming up, I'm reaching over and back down. Same thing other side. Each time trying to find a little more height, a little more length. Good. And then just rest over that ball because it feels so great. All right. Moving along, let's come to an all fours position, or tabletop if you will. And that ball is coming in between the thighs. Once I'm here, I'm tucking my toes under, finding that nice neutral spine, so pressing the ground away from me. I have a slight bend in my elbows, and all I'm going to do is just hover the knees here. Once I'm here, I'm going to start to nitpick my form. So I'll start to plug my belly button in, keep pressing away from the ground so my shoulders are nice and leveled, and then send a little more weight back into the hips, and I'll start to feel a little more activation through my quads. Now I'm going to tap my knees down and press back up. tapping down and pressing back up. Again, really focusing on keeping my belly button as close to my spine as possible and making sure all this movement is just coming from the core. Adding on, I'm going to add that squeeze of the ball. So next time my knees come up, I'm going to squeeze that ball and tap back down. One hover, one squeeze, and tap back down. This is a small but mighty one. I incorporate this almost daily. Good. Now we're going to hold it up, just holding it and hovering, squeezing that ball and pulsing for 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1, and rest. Well done. All right, last thing we'll do here is we'll take that ball and put it right underneath the chest. So we'll come all the way down to our belly, and that ball is coming right under the chest. My hands are going to be by my side for now, and my head is fairly neutral. Pressing my hips down into the mat, I'm just going to press my hands up and lift up into a back extension. Now, as I'm doing this, I'm thinking about squeezing the glutes and really tucking the tailbone so that my hip bones are pressing hard as possible. Now this is our swan. And the range here is entirely up to you. So you can start here, that's totally fine. You can go up to here, or you can take it all the way up so that the arms extend. Nice. And then, so that's swan. Then we can go into swimming. So here my arms are going to come all the way out in front. I'm just going to move up just a tad. And now, opposite arm, opposite leg. So as my left arm goes up, my right leg is going to come up. And then I just switch. So I'm in this swimming position. This is especially beneficial for your back extensors, so the muscles all along the back, which support your posture, your core. And each time I lift up, I'm really thinking about pulling in opposition. So as if someone's pulling my fingertips and my legs at the same time. So finding that extension. And you can go fast here, or you can keep it nice and slow. Entirely up to you. All right. And for our grand finale, we are going to work on some hip hinging. So we will take the ball, place it in between the thighs, come to a kneeling position. Spine is stacked, arms are nice and long, and my palms are facing each other. Now I'm going to squeeze that ball, squeeze my glutes, and tuck the pelvis forward, hinging back, meaning my whole back is nice and straight here, and everything is moving in unison. So everything that is from my knees all the way to my head is moving at the same time, like so. Now this is especially challenging. You'll feel it almost immediately in your thighs, inner, outer, upper, the whole thing. And as a modification, you can take the ball out and come to a little bit of a wider stance. Place the ball in your hands. You can just use it as a little bit of tension there. And you'll notice that once the knees are a little bit wider, you have more of a range. Just allows the hip to open up and for your back to go down a little bit lower than it normally would. While I'm doing this, I'm also thinking about pressing my shoulders back, so not allowing that rounding, really thinking about length all the way through. And adding on one more progression. Next time I come down, I'm going to pause, take that ball overhead, and bring it back up. I can also take it around the world, so pausing here, coming all the way around the world. And thank you so much for joining me. I hope you enjoyed this series with our little gray ball, and we hope to see you in our mat Pilates classes at Longevity soon.